Meditations for the Dead and Dying. Growing pains. After I sing the body electric, especially when my power is out. Like a snake, I shed the skin you so graciously shoved me into. Molting this visage gifted to me in your benevolence, my body grows too bold for the mold in which you encase me. Angry fissures spiderweb over my body in fractured magnificence. Hatching from my porcelain prison, I rise through the wreckage, jagged edges catching fresh pink skin, raking flaming valleys filled with shadows into broken arms, rippling muscles bulging under tattered limbs, aching to taste freedom from their cells. My spine stands sharp, ripping the seams sewn too tight to breathe, ribs creaking and cracking as you take me in a few more inches. Thin skin stretched tight across shoulders painted red with thrown away words, mea culpa, mea culpa. Your tongue strikes deep, but my blood runs deeper, bursting through lacerations, pouring forth from my pores. It drips from my mouth as I scream and release, waves of pain crashing against delicate flesh as cruel ecstasy throbs in every nerve. It hurts to become. Corpus Corallium. I drag her coral skeleton through the sand, laying out the pieces phalanx by phalanx, tibia to femur, vertebrae stacked, topped with a pockmarked skull. I pull strands of seaweed from silt beds, weaving them into her crown, singing as I place each lock, braiding seashells and fish bones into her hair. I reach into the mouth of a great white shark, rip out its beating heart and watch his brothers descend upon his bloodied body, wade back through the waves to place it lovingly between her ribs, affix delicate jellyfish tendril veins, watching as life begins to pulse through her. I watch her rise, dripping in ocean tears and blood, reach to her to embrace that which I had brought to be, fall to my knees and weep, sinking into soft sand as she crawls towards the sea from which I stole her. Apricots. She sinks her teeth into a tender apricot. Sticky sweet juice drips down her chin like rushing waterfalls pouring into the crevices of her skin, gathering in lakes and rivers, sugared and thick with syrupy kisses and honey-soaked bodies. She tears at bruised flesh, watching bit by bit devoured by glistening lips longing for more, to rip from the pit that supple thing, which finds its bed in the suffering, of tender fruit sucked dry, left husked and spent in the palms of indulgent hands. She carefully places the stone in my open mouth, seals it with a kiss, and watches roots grow from my toes, branches crack my ribs, a canopy burst from my crown in beautiful becoming, blooming with tender violence. She sits beneath the shade of my leaves, my boughs heavy with unclaimed fruits, waiting for her starving mouth. She cannot resist the smell of fresh nectar, licking her lips as she reaches up and plucks another tender apricot. A snack in the sunshine. You lay there asleep under the willow tree. I hear the carrion birds calling hungry songs into the dawn, wretched screeches as they beat their wings and descend upon your body. I hear flesh tear from bone like sweet babes from mother's wombs. My stomach rumbles at your carcass, stripped down to ivory nakedness, bearing itself to the rising sun, the bits not worth scavenging rot under the hot glare of the day. I crack a bone and suck the marrow. The smell of putrid matter fills my nostrils and I breathe deep, licking my fingers, sitting in the shade of the willow tree. A child screams and I fall asleep, thinking of you in the fragrant heat. a modest feast. Perverse conductors of power and gain gorge themselves on our bodies, licking bloody chops as they stare down at our skeletons dancing on gilt strings, jeweled chains hanging loosely from chipped ankles as we lurch and clatter into piles of spent ivory. Our minds were stained by the machination of our lives, and it is our time to feast. To sate starving stomachs, cut our teeth on gold-plated bones as we tear at soft flesh, chewing fat until it sticks to our tongues, coating our palates thick with rebellious words. We burned their factories, danced in the flames, and at bloody dawn they stuck their heads in piles of ashes as hungry armies of the not quite dead spilled over the horizon. They never saw us coming. Blood and body. We walked all night with shoes full of blood, and at dawn cast them off to dance barefoot over rocks with iron-stained faces, bearing our naked souls and uncalloused toes. Arches fall, tendons collapsing under the weight of standing reverent. Bones grind to dust inside the folds of our skin, and we crawl on knees rubbed raw. Gouge palms on jagged stone as prostration shatter what's left of tattered limbs. Mangled trunks inch forward like worms, writhing on warm pavement, rolling onto sun-blistered backs, praying to an empty sky until we bite off our tongues, leaving us choking in fountains of our own transubstantiation. Elegy on a highway. Stumbling down the road barefoot, with battered daisies clenched in my fists, tears on my tongue, and dirt packed into open wounds. I'm thinking about walking down Main Street with him. You know, I used to be so pretty, dripped from the inside with sunshine and honey, blowing kisses across the sidewalk. Running down the road bloody, my abdomen throbbing, stomach heaving with the effort of not spilling right out onto the black tar. I'm thinking about sunshine, how it burns if you keep it caged, that honey sticks to pieces that sting, and how quickly a kiss turns into a scream. Racing down the road ragged, with rocks in my teeth, gravel in my cheek, and blood running down my thigh, staining the hem of my dress. I'm thinking about flowers wilting on the kitchen table, my eyes empty, staring at the wall, and how the world caves in when no one is looking. Collapsing on the road, taken and spent, my body doubling on itself with remembrance, gasping for air, listening to the blissful ignorance of the cicadas. I'm thinking about white sheets on a bed that's mine, and an alarm clock ringing in the rest of my life, about sunshine and honey and the hollow left behind. Ode to Rebecoming. She wanders through a wasted land, callous beams throwing fists of needles into the backs of her retinas, sunburned dunes scorching her toes. Her nose slides down her face, the tang of iron painting her lips as bloody cartilage explodes into sprawling mountains at her feet. Soft blue veins split open like velvet tearing at the seams, spilling oceans into the sand, pooling in the tracks behind her. Swollen eyes burst in their sockets, viscous humor streaking her cheeks, dripping from her chin in jelly droplets, gouging valleys in the ground before her. Teeth rot from the roots, falling from her gaping mouth, seeding the earth in her wake, growing great trunks from their cavities. Skin peels away in chunks, carpeting the ground, muscles melt off the bone, molding new life in the cradle of dead flesh. And she is left stripped, naked, a skeleton rattling in her luscious creation. Lokia. We are born from the marrow of the skeleton of the universe. She taps a femur and lets it crack, dripping sweetness onto earth. Thick droplets, sticky and potent, crash to the ground. She takes us tenderly, unmolded, between her fingertips, pressing us into bodies we never asked to know. Stars fall from the sky like tears, shattering into 1,000 radiant fragments at our newfound feet, slicing our souls as we dance breathlessly before our mother. She sings to us in tongues, infinite vibrations rattling our bones, shaking loose our teeth and kneecaps, disjointed. Tendons snap and cartilage pops, and bodies rupture at resonant frequency. She reclaims the life she bled into us, and we rest, once again nestled into her hollows. New leaves. I love new leaves, and the smell of blood as life tumbles forward, tearing into the world from heaving wombs, umbilical cords wrapped around slender necks as young lungs struggle to take their first breath. And cherry blossoms opening in fragrant spring, impatient heads crowning through fragile buds, bursting forth in brutal inception, thin seals wrenched open with ignorant disregard. And red stains upon pink skin, tender and screaming as fresh air rakes its nails along naked nerves. The remnants of a torn vessel cling to raw flesh, glistening in the carnage left in the wake of creation. And sweet sap bleeding through cracked bark, flowing free through valleys gouged into faces of unwavering trunks, splitting as new growth forces its way into the world, green and sticky. And the violence and beauty of becoming, witnessing the sight of a child ripped from the stomach of its mother, leaving her stretched and hollow and bloody. There really is nothing more stunning than new leaves. Thank you.